So I tried to learn Mandarin pronunciation in 30 minutes and it kind of worked.
Vowels, oh Jesus Christ. Diphthongs, triphthongs, accounts.
I don't know Mandarin. I've never properly studied Mandarin unless you count like a 1-week course I took 7 years ago. The whole point of the experiment was to test how far I could get using only the International Phonetic Alphabet, or the IPA. If you're new here, the IPA is basically a giant structured map of every human sound in any language, any country, anywhere in the world. And if you want a deeper explanation of it, I already have a full video talking about the IPA, and I'll link it up here. So why did I choose to use the IPA, not Pinyin? Pinyin, for those who don't know, is the official romanized system for Mandarin, and it uses the Latin alphabet to spell Chinese syllables, and every syllable in Mandarin has a Pinyin form. So the reason I used the IPA instead was because Pinyin uses Roman letters, and those letters don't always behave in the same way English speakers expect, like the X symbol in xia. If you don't already know Mandarin, that tells you absolutely nothing about how it's supposed to be pronounced. But when I look at the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, it literally teaches me how to shape the sound. For example, the voiceless alveolar palatal fricative, which it looks like this, it doesn't exist in my languages, but the IPA gives me a manual for how to make it, where your tongue goes, how the air flows, and all that. In terms of the other symbols, you can also see where the pronunciation, where their articulation is located in images such as this, but also in the chart as well. It's a great visual to see where each consonant happens in the mouth, and Mandarin uses a bunch of different articulations that English barely touches, which is why the IPA is so helpful. If you're curious, there are also amazing MRI animations, or what used to be MRI animations, but now they're more clip art based animations, and they show how each sound looks from inside the mouth, and I'll also link that below. And so for this experiment, I just wanted to see if I can rely exclusively on the IPA, and with no or close to no Mandarin knowledge, can I even get remotely close to real pronunciation? And because I'm apparently a masochist, I decided to test myself live in front of people. If you want to see me struggle, by all means, you can go watch that video, but I'm gonna sum up everything I've learned in here. So for the live stream, I basically took the illustrations for the International Phonetic Alphabet, which you can access anywhere, the Cambridge illustrations, which I would highly recommend. And they basically give you a brief synopsis of all the sounds in that particular dialect, in that particular language. And I chose Beijing Mandarin, and I just went for it. Did I blush over a few symbols? Yes, of course. Did I panic? Oh, also very true. But in the process of it, I was trying to explain what symbols exist in Mandarin, and this fact of learning which things exist in the language kind of structures the limitations of what you actually have to learn. Okay, so now before I show you the full reading, or my attempt at the full reading, I want to walk you through some of the sounds I had to learn, and because Mandarin has a few categories that are very different from English. So I'll start with aspiration. Aspiration is actually something that exists in English as well, but we just never think about it. So for example, in peak, P is aspirated. You say peak, and there's a bit of air that flows through. You say peak, and it has a strong puff of air after it. In speak, this P is unaspirated and much cleaner and almost no air burst. So there's peak, peak, like a bit of P after there, and speak, which doesn't have that puff of air. In Mandarin, there is this distinction, and I thought that was kind of interesting. There would be something along the lines of P and P. P, which sounds even a little bit more like a B sound. In terms of the International Phonetic Alphabet, it is a different sound. So P and B. Next up, affricates. And so affricates also exist in English, but I just needed to remember which ones exist in this particular language. And an affricate is basically a stop and a fricative glued together into one sound. So like T, S, D, Z, and the list continues. You can see it right here. In English, the ch and chair and j and jam, for example. So what I saw were symbols for ts, as in the aspirated version, and the unaspirated version, which is ts. Ts, 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 stuck, 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 atsak, atsak. There's also an additional symbol which I haven't encountered anywhere in any other language, which was the alveolar palatal fricative, or something along the lines of
sha, a sha.
Sha a sha, sha a sha, or shi a shi, shu a shu. Basically, You need to be able to practice it with a vowel before and then a vowel after, or just with it starting. That's just how I practice all of the symbols when I had to prep for an exam. You can look at the International Phonetic Alphabet chart, I'll also link it in the description, and try and find that symbol. But this one was probably the most difficult for me to do, just because it doesn't fit into the generic chart. It's actually in 2 locations at the same time, and which is why it was quite difficult for me to pronounce. But I think with a bit more time, I should be able to. This is my current standing of it. So, and for that symbol, there's also the affricate version with a t before it. So it's cha, cha, which is the aspirated version, and the unaspirated version, which is cha, cha, sha, 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 cha, cha, cha. Cha, 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 cha. Okay, and now for an additional couple of symbols. So there, I talked about already about the sh sound, which doesn't exist in English or in any other language that I know. But there was also the sound which was kind of like an X, and it's a fronted velar fricative, meaning that its location is not in the same place as the H sound that exists in English. So h in English is very far back, actually. And this h is like closer to the front, which for me, it was easier to pronounce just because it also exists in Russian. And the fact that I knew that it exists in Russian also really helped me to read it. So h is pronounced with the same kind of airflow, but it's just, instead of pronouncing it in the glottis very far back, it's pronounced closer to the front, closer to where g k is pronounced. So basically k, but with air flowing out, and a little more like a h fricative sound. There's also the J sound, or the y sound. It exists in English, in yay or anything else that starts with a Y, basically. So that wasn't too difficult to understand, but just something to know. But again, I didn't focus too much on that. I started focusing more on the sounds that I've never seen before. Okay, so now those are the consonants, and now on to the vowels. Mandarin vowels look simple, but they behave slightly different than English. So here are the ones that exist in English as well. It's I, U, A, and A. As in the. It's such a common sound that it even has like a name that everyone knows. It's called the schwa. And those all exist in English. I, U, A, A. The 2 that do not exist in English are U, which exists in French, luckily for me. It is the rounded version of I. So basically when you pronounce I, if you were to pronounce I exactly the same, except make your mouth a circle, so it'd be U, U, I, U, I, U. And then there was a sound that I've never actually used in any of the other languages that I speak, but similar kind of idea. Except this time, instead of rounding, you unround. So it's the unrounded version of O. So instead of O, you say O, O. This was new for me, and again, I'm almost certain that I'm not pronouncing it entirely correctly, but it's close enough. I kind of tried to gather this general idea of what sounds exist, and then I moved on to tones. So again, of course, my tones aren't perfect, also because I haven't studied tones as much as I've studied the actual chart. But here is what I have learned. Basically, tones, usually when you read them, they have a starting position of the pitch and the ending position of the pitch. So the easiest one in Mandarin, from what I've discovered, is like the straight across. So like in ma or shuo, shuo, ma, ba, anything, ta, anything like that. Steady high pitch and holding just one level. So then after the steady high-pitched tone, there's the rising tone, which is kind of like you're asking a question. So ma, or at least that's what I found would be most useful, to go from mid-tone to higher, like a For the low, rising and falling, I guess, was usually how it's written in Pinyin, the dun. I heard somewhere at some point in time that it basically goes into your creaky voice. And creaky voice is kind of, if I were to speak like this, that is creaky voice. There's the opposite, which is breathy voice, is if I were to be speaking like this with tons of air coming out, then that would be breathy voice. And this distinction exists because there are certain languages where creaky voice is different from breathy voice. So one word, example word. Like if I were to say track, track, and track, those would be 2 or 3 completely different words in certain languages, which I think is really cool. But anyway, so creaky voice, and you go into creaky voice and then kind of rise up a little bit. Something along the lines of ma, ma, ma. Something like that. Again, I'm going off of just symbols, but I think that's kind of how you're supposed to pronounce it. And then the last one was falling tone, and I've heard people call it like a statement one, like a firm, like affirming kind of tone. So here would be like ma, da, ba. I don't know, other stuff. But again, I definitely didn't master them, but I got closer than I expected for first half hour of practice, I would say. So now for maybe the thing you've been waiting for, I'm going to attempt to read a sentence in Mandarin after around 1.5 hours of practice in total. So be gentle, please. I'm going to be pronouncing the tones very slowly, meaning that normally when people speak at this speed, their tones will be slightly different. So like ni could become ni, for example, something like that. So this is my attempt. 有一回北方跟太阳常在那儿升温水的喷淋塔. That is my attempt. There are more details in Mandarin phonology, co-articulation, retroflexion, vowels, and allophones, but I wanted to keep it simple for now. I decided that nuance is a bit too much for me at the moment. Maybe sometime later I'll come back and do other different parts of Mandarin, just because I think that'll take a bit more time for me to figure out. But for now I wanted to give like a general kind of idea of what I did. By the way, if you want to learn how to use the IPA for your own language or a language that you're studying, I also offer one-on-one consultations or pronunciation and IPA consultations where I break down the problem sounds and try and fix them with you using linguistics instead of just vibes. I'll link the form in the description below, and again, if you want a full structured explanation of how IPA works, my detailed video is linked somewhere around here. Also, another disclosure, I do not speak Chinese. I don't understand it, and I don't pretend to understand it. But, and this is important, I have watched an unreasonable number of Chinese dramas, and I do practice traditional Chinese dance, which is taught entirely in Mandarin with no English, so I do hear the language quite a bit, and I guess some of it might stick subconsciously. Something to know. So if you want to see me struggle through the live, the replay is still up, you can still watch it. The live stream is definitely less structured than this video. I don't know if I'll do more like it, maybe I will, and then I'll follow up with a polished breakdowns like this one. Let me know in the comments if that's a format you would be interested in and what other languages you would want me to cover next. And if you're interested in the full IPA deep dive video, again, link right here. And if you want personalized help analyzing IPA in your language, the consultation link is in the description. I know it might have been a bit of a rambly video, but I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching. Let me know what other things you want me to cover. See ya!